Most people think they understand Japan. A country of neon cities, fast trains, and quiet traditions. But most of this land is not like that at all. Beyond the famous streets, Japan becomes something else. A place of dense forests, volcanic ground, and narrow paths that rarely appear on postcards. Here, silence carries detail, and small places hold more presence than entire cities. From the slopes of Mount Fuji to hidden neighborhoods in Tokyo to quiet shrines where time feels carefully layered. This is not the Japan most people visit. This is the Japan you only notice when you slow down enough to see it. Itsukushima Shrine sits at the edge of the Seto Inland Sea, where daily tides quietly change the way the shoreline is read. On Miyajima, Itsukushima Shrine, Hiroshima, Japan, feels less like a single building and more like a careful conversation between cedar, water, and time. The shrine's covered corridors are built on stilts, so the boardwalk seems to hover above the shallows when the sea comes in. Vermilion pillars, white walls, and dark beams keep a restrained balance, even as salt air works at every surface. At low tide, the mudflats expose stones and small channels, and visitors can walk closer to details that disappear hours later. Beyond the main complex, quiet paths lead toward Daisho Inn and the forested slopes of Mount Misen, where the island's older rhythms feel intact. Getting here is usually straightforward. Ferries connect the mainland to Miyajima through the day, and it's not hard to find simple hotels or guest houses if you stay overnight. Wi-Fi is common around the port area, and many travelers use a local SIM or eSIM for smoother navigation. When the tide returns, the shrine's most distinctive feature comes into focus: the great Torii Gate standing offshore, its bright legs set in water, so the entrance appears to float just above a moving, reflective surface. Mount Fuji sits with an unhurried presence over central Honshu, its profile familiar and yet rarely looked at closely. From Mount Fuji, Honshu, Japan, the quieter details begin just beyond the postcards. On the northern side, Small lanes lead to Oshino Hakone, where clear springs surface from old lava layers, filtered for decades beneath the ground. Early mornings here feel like listening to water think. Aokigahara, spreading across the hardened lava plain, is dense and unusually quiet, with roots gripping porous rock instead of deep soil. It's also one of those dangerous places when weather turns and trails vanish into similar-looking trees. At Fujisan Hongu Sengen Taisha in Fujinomiya, the mountain is treated less as scenery and more as a living boundary. Stone lanterns and shaded paths keep the pace slow. Up close, Fuji's most distinctive signature is underfoot, a broad skin of black, loose volcanic scoria that crunches softly with each step. Kiyomizu-dera Temple holds its quietest stories in the pauses between footsteps, when Kyoto's hillside air carries incense and cedar instead of conversation. At Kiyomizu-dera Temple, Kyoto, Japan, most visitors follow the main flow, but the grounds reward a slower turn of the head. Mossed stone edges, small lanterns, and the soft scrape of sandals make their own kind of map. Along the approach, wooden shops and tea scents fade, and the temple's sub-halls feel like separate rooms in an old house. A bell's aftertone lingers just long enough to blend with distant city noise below. Near the Otaru waterfall, 3 thin streams run into waiting cups, and the sound is more intimate than grand. People step forward, sip, and step aside, as if keeping a small appointment with the mountain. Behind the brighter photo spots, paths slip past maples and tucked away shrines where offerings are simple and fresh. In spring, the light is pale and shifting. In autumn, it turns copper and settles on roof tiles. Then, there is the temple's wide wooden stage, pushed out over the slope on a forest of tall pillars, hovering above the trees like a porch built for listening. From its edge, the view is quiet, and the wood beneath you feels steady and old. Hakone Shrine sits in the cedar shade near Lake Ashi, where the air feels cooler and the noise of the road quickly thins out. In Hakone Shrine, Kanagawa, Japan, the approach is less about spectacle than about small details, wet stone, moss, and lanterns softened by time. A long stairway leads inward, passing old trees with thick roots that press against the path like slow-moving currents. Even on busy days, the forest absorbs voices and leaves only a low murmur behind. The buildings are painted in restrained, deep colors, and the carvings reward anyone who pauses long enough to look. Nearby, small offering boxes and hanging plaques collect brief wishes written with careful handwriting. Most visitors stay in Hakone's ryokan, or simple guest houses, and it's easy to find a place within walking distance of bus stops around the lake. Mobile reception is generally steady, and a local SIM or eSIM helps with timetables when the fog makes landmarks harder to read. In the quieter corners, the shrine feels older than its dates because the setting does so much of the work. Wind moves through the cedars in uneven waves, and the lake light changes by the minute. What lingers here is the vermilion torii standing in Lake Ashi, its legs set in dark water, catching faint ripples and the soft drift of mist. Otaru feels like a working port that never needed to announce itself, just quietly keeping its own pace beside the sea. In Otaru, Hokkaido, Japan, the old merchant town still shows through in small details: stone storehouses, narrow lanes, and shops that favor craft over spectacle. Walk Sakaimachi Street slowly, and you'll catch the scent of baked sweets, the clink of glassware, and the soft chiming of music boxes that locals still buy as gifts, not souvenirs. A short detour follows the Tamiya line, an abandoned rail corridor turned footpath where wild grasses lean into the ballast, and the city sounds thin out without ever disappearing. At the Nishin-Goten, the Herring Mansion, a polished wood and spare rooms hint at the hard seasonal wealth that once moved through Hokkaido's fisheries and into Otaru's warehouses. Back in town, the most distinctive sight remains the gently curving Otaru Canal, where stone warehouses and old-style lamps cast steady reflections that drift and settle on the water. Arashiyama bamboo forest feels most present in the early morning, when the main walkway is still settling into quiet. The air carries a clean, green scent, and footsteps naturally slow. Arashiyama Bamboo Forest, Kyoto, Japan, sits on the western edge of the city, near the Katsura River and the long span of Togetsukuyo Bridge. A short detour brings you to Tenryuji's gardens, where raked gravel and pond reflections offer a calmer counterpoint. Past the busiest entrance, narrower lanes slip behind low walls and small shrines, and the bamboo thickens into an almost continuous screen. If you keep to marked paths, there's no need to chase dangerous roads into the hills to find solitude. Most visitors arrive by train at Arashiyama or nearby Saga Arashiyama Station, and then walk or use local buses for short hops. A local SIM or eSIM is easy to set up, and Wi-Fi is commonly available in cafes around the station for checking timetables. In the surrounding Sagano area, modest lanes pass tea shops, quiet cemeteries, and tucked-away temple gates that many people miss. Even in daylight, shade gathers quickly where the stalks stand close together. The detail that lingers is the bamboo itself. Tall, smooth culms tapping softly against one another, making a dry, hollow clack above the path as the wind threads through. Fushimi Inari Shrine feels less like a single destination and more like a quiet corridor through Kyoto's everyday edges. It's a place where the city's sounds thin out, one step at a time. At Fushimi Inari Shrine, Kyoto, Japan, the first torii gates appear almost casually, then multiply until the path becomes its own enclosed world. Even on busy days, the space between footsteps can feel surprisingly private. The climb passes small altars, fox statues with watchful faces, and side trails that slip toward modest clearings. Look closely, and you'll notice the gates carry names and dates, a record of offerings that turns the walkway into a kind of ledger. If you're staying in Kyoto, you can usually find simple, good-value guest houses along the rail lines. And mobile service is dependable for maps, with Wi-Fi common in stations and cafes. Planet travelers often rely on the same basics. Arrive early or later in the evening, if you prefer softer crowds and cooler air. What lingers most is the endless tunnel of Vermilion Torii, close set and weathered, casting a warm, shifting shade that follows you up the mountain. Tokyo is often understood through its famous crossings and bright avenues, yet the city's quieter corners keep their own careful rhythms. In Tokyo, Japan, slip behind the shopping streets of Yanaka, and you'll find lanes that still feel like a neighborhood, not a destination. Low houses, small temples, and cats warming themselves on sunlit steps. Along the Kanda River, the waterway bends past modest parks and back entrances, where commuters eat on benches and bicycles lean against railings. In spring, blossoms collect in the current like pale confetti. Under the tracks near Yurakucho, tiny counterbars hide in the brick arches, serving grilled skewers and simple rice bowls to regulars who know each other by voice. It's one of those unseen places that feels accidental, yet enduring. Step into the outer grounds of Meiji Jingu early, and the city sound thins to gravel underfoot, crows in the trees, and the soft knock of wooden prayer plaques in the breeze. What lingers most in Tokyo is the close, constant presence of its elevated rail lines, steel beams above narrow streets, trains passing every few minutes, stitching everyday life together with a steady humming overhead. Ishigaki Island feels like Japan's subtropical edge, where sugarcane fields give way to jungle ridgelines and quiet coves. On Ishigaki Island, Okinawa, Japan, the pace slows quickly once you leave the small port streets behind. On the north side, Fukido's Mangrove Creek slides under low bridges, and the air turns brackish and green. Farther on, a short walk near Hirakubozaki opens to wind-shaped grass and a wide horizon of sea. Getting around is easiest with a small rental car, since buses thin out beyond town, and many trailheads aren't signed prominently. Getting connected is straightforward here. Local SIMs and eSIMs are common, and Wi-Fi shows up reliably in modest guest houses and cafes. Along the west coast, Kabira's viewpoints look down on boats resting in calm shallows, while nearby beaches stay low-key outside peak hours. At Yonehara, tide and wind decide whether the shore is a snorkeler's window or a quiet line of foam. What lingers most on Ishigaki is the shallow coral reef lagoon at Kabira Bay, turning the water a pale opaque turquoise just beyond the dark reef line. Koyasan feels less like a single town and more like a quiet, ridgetop neighborhood of temples tucked into cedar forests in Japan. In Koyasan, Wakayama, Japan, the air often carries the scent of wet bark and incense, especially after a light mountain rain. Narrow roads connect halls, small shops, and stone steps that disappear into shade. At Danjo-garan, bright vermilion buildings sit calmly against deep greens, and the pagoda's clean lines give the complex a measured rhythm. Nearby, Kongobuji offers sliding doors, ink paintings, and rock gardens that ask you to slow down without saying a word. Many visitors choose a shukubo, a temple lodging, where simple rooms and early schedules set the tone. Shojin Ryori, Buddhist vegetarian cooking, arrives as careful portions of tofu, as sesame, mountain vegetables, and broths that taste like the season. You'll hear Koya-san described once in a while as Haida Planet, planet territory, not because it's unknown, but because it stays inward-facing and unhurried. Even daytime feels muted here, filtered through branches and paper screens. And when you walk into Okunoin, the most distinctive detail is the long, cedar-dark path where thousands of mossed stone markers sit beneath a steady line of lantern light. Jigokudani Monkey Park sits in a narrow valley where winter air hangs cold and the ground exhales steam. The approach is quiet, a footpath threading through forest and stone. In Nagano Prefecture, the ravine is known as Hell Valley, a plain description for its sulfur scent and bubbling vents. Jigokudani Monkey Park, Nagano, Japan, feels tucked away from the usual onsen towns. The walk-in passes Cedars and bare beach with patches of ice lingering in shade even when sunlight reaches the trail. Water trickles under bridges, and the valley narrows as you near the hot springs. Japanese macaques appear in small groups, unhurried and observant, moving between rocks and snowbanks with practiced ease. Rangers keep a respectful distance, while visitors learn the park's simple etiquette. Watch, wait, don't interfere. Nearby, the wider highlands of Shiga-Kogen and the town of Yamanouchi show how much this region lives by seasonal rhythm. On Haida Planet, it's the kind of hidden place no one talks about, yet it stays memorable in its restraint. Most distinctive of all is the single hot spring pool, rimmed with dark rock, where macaques lower themselves into mineral water as snow gathers on their fur. Kyoto keeps its best secrets in plain daylight, tucked between ordinary streets and the slow curve of the Kamo River. In Kyoto, Japan, the quiet often begins a block away from the crowds. Step into Shosei Garden, near Higashi Honganji, where a pond reflects footbridges and clipped pines, and the city noise thins to a hush. It's a place locals pass without lingering, even though every turn feels carefully composed. Farther north in Ohara, the lanes lead to Sanzen Inn's mossy grounds, cool even in summer, with small stone figures half sunk in green. The air smells of wet cedar and earth, more mountain village than famous temple town. In Takao, buses trace extreme roads along the Kiyotaki River toward Jingoji, where steps climb through maples and old incense. A pause at the overlooks, and you'll hear water moving below, steady and unhurried. Closer in, the alleys of Miyagawa-cho and the back streets of Nishijin reveal wooden lattice fronts, tiny workshops, and shrines no larger than a doorway. Here, evening light settles softly on plaster walls and paper lanterns. What stays with Kyoto is the moss, a dense, velvety carpet in shaded gardens that holds yesterday's rain, turning stone, cedar roots, and low walls into a single, quiet green surface. Mount Miyoko sits quietly on the horizon of northern Honshu, its broad volcanic shape familiar to locals but easy for travelers to pass by. Up close, Mount Miyoko, Niigata, Japan, feels less like a single peak and more like a lived-in landscape. In the town of Myoko, small lanes lead to trailheads, farm plots, and steaming vents where the ground seems to exhale. Even the air carries a hint of minerals near the onsen districts, especially around Akakura and Ekinotaira. A little higher, the forests change character, with stands of beech and conifer that soften the sound of wind and footsteps. Clear streams cut through dark soil, and on overcast days, the mountain's contours fade into pale cloud. Local rhythms follow the seasons rather than the calendar. Planting in the low fields, hiking in brief windows of stable weather, then long months when roads narrow under piled banks. Ski lifts and quiet shrines share the same slopes without much fuss. If there's one feature that truly sets Mount Miyoko apart, it's the sheer weight of its winter snowfall, dense, persistent, and deep enough to reshape paths, rooftops, and the mountain's silence for weeks at a time. Hokkaido feels spacious and unhurried, where long horizons leave room for small, easily missed details. Step off the main routes, and the island's quieter stories start to register. In Hokkaido, Japan, the back roads around Biei and Kamifura-ano slip between patchwork fields and windbreak trees. Even a simple farm track can frame distant peaks and a sky that seems unusually wide. Along the Shiratoko Peninsula, short side trails lead to capes and inlets that don't make many itineraries. Dark volcanic rock, kelp-strewn shallows, and the scent of spruce hold the coast in a steady hush. In the marshes of Kushiro, the boardwalks thin out and the soundscape changes from traffic to reeds and water. On still mornings, the tannin-stained channels mirror the pale grasses and low clouds. Sapporo's edges also have their overlooked corners, where shrine paths and wooded slopes begin just beyond neighborhood streets. In the right season, you can hear nothing but crows and snow underfoot. And then there is the Sea of Okhotsk, where winter brings drift ice to the shore near Abashiri and Monbetsu. White plates clicking and grinding, turning the water's surface into a moving field of frost. Osaka moves at a practical pace, but its quieter corners still hold long pauses for anyone willing to step off the main streets of Osaka, Japan. In Nakazakicho, narrow lanes keep low wooden houses tucked between mid-rise buildings, with small coffee counters and vintage shops occupying what used to be ordinary homes. Hozenji Yokocho is easy to miss beside the bright pool of Namba, yet its stone path stays dim and close, lined with lanterns and tiny doorways. The moss-covered Fudo-Myu statue nearby is kept wet by steady ladles of water, darkening the green like velvet. Utsubo Park offers a different kind of hush. Long lawns, formal rose beds, and shaded benches where office noise fades into birds and bicycle tires. A few converted warehouses at the edges hint at the areas working past. On Nakanoshima, the rivers frame museums, reading rooms, and calm promenades under bridges that most people simply cross. Most visitors find it easy to use an IC transit card and pick up a local SIM or eSIM. And the clusters of business hotels around Umeda and Namba keep late returns uncomplicated. Even Kuromon Ichiba has back lanes in the early morning, where steam from stockpots drifts past small shrines and tool shops before the crowds arrive. What lingers in Osaka is the water itself, the dark, steady flow of the Dojima and Tosabori rivers tightening around Nakanoshima, slipping under low bridges with a soft, continuous sound. Takato Castle Park sits on a wooded hill above the Ina Valley, where the outlines of an old fortress have softened into paths and lawns. In Takato Castle Park, Nagano, Japan, the air often carries the clean scent of river country and cedar. Centuries ago, this was a strategic castle town, and the park still follows that logic of defenses and boundaries. Low stonework, earthen embankments, and careful turns in the walk hint at where gates and watchpoints once stood. What draws quiet attention here is not a tower, but the way the site changes with the seasons. Spring brings the famed Takato Kohigan cherry trees, a local variety, with small petals and a deeper, rosier tone than many of Japan's more familiar blossoms. The paths wander past slopeside overlooks and opening briefly to distant ridgelines before folding back into shade. Even in daylight, the park can feel hushed, with only footsteps, birds, and the faint sound of wind moving through branches. Look closely, and the ground tells its own story. Terraces where buildings once sat, edges that drop into old moat lines, and stairways that lead nowhere in particular anymore. It's a place where history survives in spacing and elevation rather than in preserved rooms. Come early, and you'll notice how the light behaves here, sliding through layers of trees and catching on petals or bare stone. In calmer weather, fallen blossoms gather in pale drifts along the curves of the walk. Most distinctive is the dense canopy of Takato Kohigan sakura, forming a continuous, pink-tinted tunnel over the former castle moat traces. Okinawa sits at Japan's southern edge, where daily life moves to the pace of tide and trade winds. In Okinawa, Japan, the main roads are busy, but the quieter corners still hold the island's older rhythms. In the north, the Yambaru forest thickens into a deep green canopy, with narrow streams slipping over limestone and roots. Short walks here can feel remote, even when you're only a few turns from a village road. Along the southeast coast, Sefa Utaki stays hushed beneath stone steps and shaded rock corridors. The air cools under banyan leaves, and the place asks for a slower voice without saying a word. Not far away, the Gangala Valley follows an ancient limestone cave system, where stalactites hang above a thin ribbon of water. Guided paths reveal a landscape shaped more by rain and time than by human plans. On the Motobu Peninsula, low walls and empty gates at Nakijin Castle ruins catch the last light and the sea breeze. From the heights, you can trace old defensive lines against the modern coastline. Even the back streets of Tsuboya feel tucked away, where kiln-fired shisa figures watch from ledges and courtyards. Craft shops here smell faintly of clay, ash, and warm stone. What stays longest, though, is the reef. Shallow, pale coral visible through clear water, like a living map drawn just offshore. Nikko feels tucked into a cool mountain valley, where cedar scent drifts between old stone walls and fast water. In Nikko, Tochigi, Japan, the famous names are nearby, but the quieter corners keep the longer memories. Step away from the main shrine approaches, and you'll find small lanes with humble eateries, worn stairways, and side gates that locals use without ceremony. In the early light, even the red lacquered Shinkyo Bridge looks less like a landmark and more like part of the river's daily routine. Downstream, Kanmanga-Fuchi offers a hushed path along the Daya River, shaded by trees and laced with volcanic rock. Weathered Jizo statues stand in uneven rows, their knit caps and bibs fading softly in the mist. Farther up, and the switchbacks toward Okuniko trade shrine town bustle for marshland and open sky, especially around Senjogahara. Lake edges, small trails, and sudden quiet make the landscape feel wider than the map suggests. Most visitors arrive easily by rail and bus, and the area around Tobuniko has plenty of modest guest houses if you book ahead for weekends. A local SIM or eSIM works well here, and Wi-Fi is common in stations and many inns. What stays most distinctive is that riverside line at Kanmanga-Fuchi. Jizo figures repeating into shade, never perfectly counted twice, beside the constant, cold rush of the Daya. Lake Ashi feels like a pause between mountains, where the water holds the colors of the sky without asking for attention. Fishing boats and tour vessels move quietly, leaving only thin seams of wake. In Lake Ashi, Kanagawa, Japan, the shoreline bends through Hakone's volcanic caldera, and the air can change from bright to misty in minutes. Even on busy days, the coves keep their own smaller weather. Along the old Tokido route, a cedar avenue still traces the path of travelers who once walked between Edo and Kyoto. The trees stand close and straight, and the ground feels muffled underfoot. Near Moto Hakone, small docks, souvenir stalls, and lakeside cafes sit back from the waterline as if keeping the view intact. Across the lake, as slopes fold into one another in layered greens and grays. A short ride away, the Hakone ropeway drifts toward Owakudani, where sulfur vents and bare rock announce the region's heat beneath the surface. The contrast makes the lake seem cooler, calmer, more deliberate. Most evenings, attention settles on one simple detail: the vermilion torii gate standing in the shallows, its posts darkened at the waterline as ripples tap and release. Hiroshima is often approached through a few familiar landmarks, yet its quieter corners keep their own pace beside the water. In Hiroshima, Japan, everyday life threads through small shrines, riverbanks, and back streets. Before the streetcars fill, walk the narrow lanes around Yokogawa and listen for the soft clatter of shutters and bicycles. Tiny Kisaten cafes open early, and neighborhood temples sit almost flush with the sidewalk. On Hijiyama Hill, the main paths are well known, but side trails slip into camphor and pine, where the city sounds thin out. From a bench near the ridgeline, rooftops appear in layers, broken by bridges. Mitaki-dera, tucked into a wooded valley, feels cool even in warm months. Stone steps, small waterfalls, and mossy lanterns make the air seem slower, as if it has weight. Down at Motujina, the coastal forest holds a different kind of hush, saltier and more open. Footpaths lead past wind-shaped trees to small coves where fishing lines arc out over dark water. In the port area of Ujina, watch the working shoreline rather than the departures board. Warehouses, docks, and quiet seawalls reveal how much of the city still leans toward the inland sea. What stays with you is the Ota River Delta itself. Multiple channels braiding through town, with low bridges and slow currents turning ordinary streets into a city of water. Yokohama sits beside Tokyo Bay with an easygoing, lived-in rhythm that can be missed on a quick pass. In Yokohama, Kanagawa, Japan, the quieter corners often begin just a few blocks from the bright waterfront. Behind Sakuragacho Station, Nogayama Park turns into a small hillside refuge where local walkers follow shaded paths and the city noise softens. Down below, the narrow lanes of Nogi still hold tiny jazz bars and old snack shops that keep their lights low. Farther south, Sankaien Garden rewards slow steps, especially around its outer ponds where herons stand still and footsteps sound like whispers on stone. Look for the tucked-away viewpoints near the old farmhouses, where the modern skyline becomes a distant outline. Along the Uka River, Koganeko has reworked spaces under the railway into studios and small galleries with murals that change quietly over time. It's an unhurried walk at dusk, when train rumbles past overhead like weather. Getting around is simple. Local trains and buses connect Kannai, Yamate, and Minatomirai with little waiting, and signs are clear. Staying connected is straightforward too. eSIMs work well, and Wi-Fi is common in small hotels and cafes near the stations. In the end, Yokohama's most distinctive presence is its working harbor water, where cranes and ships cast long, moving reflections that never fully settle. Matsumoto moves at an unhurried pace, where everyday streets sit close to the Japanese Alps and the air often feels freshly washed. In Matsumoto, Nagano, Japan, the most interesting corners are the ones locals pass without comment. Start near Matsumoto Castle, not for spectacle, but for the way its dark wood and low stone base mirror quietly in the moat. Even in the morning, you can hear soft footfalls on gravel and the occasional call of a heron. A few blocks away, Nakamachi-dori keeps its old storehouse architecture, white walls, black lattice, and thick earthen textures turned into small craft shops and coffee counters. The streetlights and shop curtains feel chosen, not branded. Along Nawat-dori, the Frog Street, tiny vendors line the Matoba River with snacks, postcards, and hand-carved charms. It's the kind of lane where you pause because someone is tending a display with care, not because a sign told you to. Slip into Agatanamori Park and the old school buildings where tall trees soften the city's sounds. Nearby shrines sit modestly behind gates, offering shade and a brief coolness even in summer. From here, Matsumoto also serves as a calm threshold to Asama Onsen and the bus routes toward mountain valleys. Yet the city itself stays grounded in small walks and short distances. What lingers most is the cold, clear spring water, snowmelt-fed and steady, running through channels and moats, bright enough to show the pebbles resting on the bottom. Nagoya moves at a working city's pace, but it keeps small corners where time feels unhurried. In Nagoya, Aichi, Japan, the quiet starts a few blocks off the wide avenues. Walk the Shikamichi district near the old canal, where dark wooden townhouses and white plaster walls still hold their lines. In the early morning, the lanes feel like a pause between deliveries and commuter trains. Closer to downtown, Endoji Shopping Street and its side alleys mix retro cafes with tool shops that never bothered to modernize. A little farther south, Osu's backstreets hide tiny record stores and second-hand kimono racks behind louder arcades. For a calmer hour, step into the Tokugawa Garden and follow the path that bends around ponds, stones, and clipped pines. Even when the city is humid, the shade here stays noticeably cooler. Getting around is straightforward on the subway, and it's usually easy to find reasonably priced hotels near Nagoya Station if you book a night ahead. Pocket Wi-Fi and eSIM options are common, and most cafes offer stable connections for simple maps and messages. Above the trees at Nagoya Castle, the most unmistakable detail is the pair of gold Shihoko, mythic fish tigers, catching flat daylight and turning it into a steady, metallic glow. Niseko sits on Hokkaido's southwestern side, a quiet mountain basin that feels both lived in and wide open. In winter, the town moves at an unhurried pace between ski lifts, small streets, and the steady rhythm of falling snow. In Niseko, Hokkaido, Japan, the well-known slopes are only part of the story, and the hush begins just beyond the main runs. Side roads lead to farm fields and riverside paths where fox tracks and ski lines sometimes cross in the same pale light. Between turns, locals slip into simple onsen baths tucked behind wooden facades where steam drifts into the cold air and conversation stays low. Even the convenience stores feel like warm shelters, bright and practical against the long dusk. You can usually find good value guest houses and modest hotels in Hirafu or Kuchan without needing anything fancy, especially if you book a little ahead. Mobile coverage is solid, and pocket Wi-Fi or an eSIM is an easy way to stay connected on the train and in town. On clearer days, small cafes and viewpoints frame Mount Yote across the plain, its shape familiar to everyone, yet never quite the same twice. After dark, the streets quiet down early, and the sound of skis on packed snow becomes its own kind of map. What lingers in Niseko is the snow itself, fine, dry powder that gathers in soft layers on rails, branches, and roof lines, then lifts at the slightest touch into a pale, weightless drift. Kamakura moves at a slower pace than its reputation suggests, with daily life tucked between wooded slopes and the sea. In Kamakura, Kanagawa, Japan, small lanes still lead to places that feel privately held. Start with the old cut-through roads in the hills, like Asaina Kiridoshi, where stone walls and roots mark the passage that once linked coast and interior. After rain, the earth darkens, and the moss turns the path into a soft green corridor. Near Nagoi, the Mandarado Yagura caves sit quietly in the hillside. Small medieval tombs carved into rock, some barely wider than a doorway. The air is cooler here, and the chisel marks look surprisingly fresh in the shade. In the neighborhoods, Myohonji often stays off the main flow. Its temple grounds, framed by maples and a long, calm approach. Even Zenyarai Benzaiten's spring, famous for rinsed coins, becomes hushed if you arrive early enough to hear water echo in the cave. Down at Inamuragasaki, when the tide pulls back, tide pools appear among dark volcanic rock, holding anemones and small crabs. A few steps inland, the same salt air slips into bamboo and cedar. What sets Kamakura apart is that narrow strip where steep green hills press directly against Sagami Bay, so the sound of surf and the cool forest shade overlap in the same breath. Kabira Bay feels like a quiet inlet on Ishigaki, where the shoreline curves gently and the air carries salt and warm green scents. In Kabira Bay, Okinawa, Japan, the water shifts from pale jade to deeper teal with the passing clouds. Low hills cradle the bay, and small beaches appear between rock and vegetation, more observed than occupied. The soundscape is soft, oars, distant engines, and wind moving through coastal trees. Glass-bottom boats drift across the shallows, letting you look down without disturbing the reef beneath. From the viewing decks along the road, the same scene changes hour by hour, depending on tide and sunlight. It's usually straightforward to stay in Ishigaki City and visit by bus, taxi, or a short rental car drive, especially if you settle your booking a night ahead. Mobile coverage is reliable around town. and cafes often have simple Wi-Fi for checking maps and ferry times. Nearby, the Yaeyama landscape keeps its scale human. Small farms, local markets, and quiet side roads that lead back to the coast. Even when the day is bright, shaded paths and brief rain showers keep the heat from feeling sharp. Late afternoon thins the crowds, and the bay becomes mostly color and reflection, edged by dark green. Fishing boats and tour craft sit lightly on the surface, then slip away. What stays with you is the bay's translucent turquoise water, clear enough to reveal coral patterns just beneath the surface. Sensoji Temple feels most intimate when the crowds thin and the sounds settle into footsteps, bells, and distant traffic. In Sensoji Temple, Tokyo, Japan, the famous approach is only the first layer of a much older neighborhood rhythm. From the Sumida riverside, Asakusa's back streets lead you in with small workshops, vending machines, and a sudden glimpse of tiled roofs beyond ordinary storefronts. Even the air seems to change as you near the temple grounds. Nakamichi-dori draws nearly everyone, but pause at the edges, where shutters open slowly and shopkeepers sweep yesterday's dust from the stone. A turn into a narrower lane can be quieter than the main walkway by a surprising margin. Inside the precinct, incense curls upward in soft streams, and the main hall keeps a steady hush despite constant movement. Nearby, the 5-story pagoda offers a different kind of stillness, framed by pines and courtyard light. Look for the smaller shrines, tucked beside the larger structures, fox statues, worn stone basins, and lanterns that seem to belong to another pace of time. These details sit close to eye level, easy to miss when you're watching the skyline. Most visitors find it easy to stay in Asakusa or nearby Ueno, where simple guest houses and mid-range hotels are common. A local eSIM and the widespread Wi-Fi around stations make timing trains and finding quieter entrances much easier. And then there's the gate, the Kamina Rimon's enormous red paper lantern, heavy, ribbed, and close enough to study its brushstrokes as it sways above the street. Matsumoto Castle sits low against the broad plain, with the Japanese Alps faintly present beyond the rooftops. In Matsumoto Castle, Nagano, Japan, the approach feels unhurried, framed by water and stone rather than crowds. Built in the late 1500s, the keep was designed for defense and for watching the roadways that once fed this basin. Locals still call it Karasu-jo, the Crow Castle, for its dark exterior and sharp, compact silhouette. Inside, the mood changes with each level. Steep wooden stairs, narrow windows for arches, and thick beams worn smooth by centuries of hands. Higher up, a calmer chamber opens to the idea of viewing the moon, an elegant pause inside a fortress. Most travelers reach the castle easily from Matsumoto Station, and the surrounding streets have small guest houses and business hotels that keep things simple. A local SIM or eSIM usually works well here, and cafe Wi-Fi is common for checking train times or museum hours. Late in the day, the most memorable detail is the black lacquer keep, held in the moat's still surface, as if the castle is doubled in quiet water. Matsuyama feels like a working castle town, where daily routines move at streetcar speed and the quieter corners stay politely out of sight. In Matsuyama, Ehime, Japan, the air carries sea weather from the Seto Inland Sea without ever sounding like a tourist slogan. Most visitors aim for Matsuyama Castle, but the back approach, stone steps, side gates, and small overlooks offers the better story. From there, narrow lanes slip into older neighborhoods, where shop curtains sway and bicycles lean against low walls. A short ride away, Ishiteji Temple sits along the Shikoku pilgrimage route, and its mossy paths reward a slower pace than the main hall suggests. Look for the dim, tunnel-like passage and the calm, decluttered corners where votive objects gather over time. For a different layer of the city, Bansuiso, a Taisho-era villa, keeps its Western-style rooms and gardens surprisingly hushed. The contrast isn't loud, it's in the details, like light on stained glass and worn wooden stairs. You can usually find simple, good-value guest houses around Hokkaido or near Dogo, close enough to reach major sites by tram. Mobile service is easy to manage with an eSIM, and Wi-Fi is common in cafes and station area hotels. In the end, what marks Matsuyama most clearly is Dogo's hot spring water, warm and mineral-scented, drifting up in soft steam around the wooden bathhouse at night. Shibuya Crossing looks like the center of everything, yet it hides its quiet corners in plain sight. Stand back beneath the station canopy and listen to the soft echo of footsteps between the pillars. In Shibuya Crossing, Tokyo, Japan, most people aim for the photo and keep moving. If you slow down, you notice the tiny choreography: office shoes, school sneakers, delivery carts, all threading through the same few seconds. Slip into the passageways inside Shibuya Station, and the mood changes. Signboards glow, trains sigh, and the crowd thins into purposeful lines headed for the Ginza Line, the Saikyo Line, and the private rail gates. A few steps away, narrow lanes like Nonbei Yokocho offer a different scale. Lantern light, small doorways, and the scent of grilled skewers turn the famous intersection into distant background noise. Look upward from the curb, and you'll catch a moving ceiling of screens and windows. Even here, Tokyo's city life is measured in reflections: umbrellas, storefront glass, and the damp shine after rain. And when the signals change, the distinctive feature arrives: 5 streams of people crossing at once over wide white zebra stripes that form a clean X across the asphalt. For a moment, the entire scene is written in lines. Kanazawa keeps its quieter corners close, where daily life moves at an unhurried pace beside old walls and narrow waterways. In Kanazawa, Ishikawa, Japan, the famous sights are never far, but the overlooked paths are often more telling. In the back lanes behind Nishi-Chaya district, the tea house facades give way to workshops and small courtyards, half-screened by Noren curtains. Listen for the soft clink of tools where artisans handle lacquer and gold leaf away from the main streets. Nagamachi's Samurai Quarter is best felt along the shallow canals, where earthen walls darken after rain and stone drains guide the runoff. Even in daylight, the streets carry a muted, private atmosphere. Teramachi, the temple district, offers a different kind of hush. Gates, lanterns, and mossy steps tucked between ordinary houses. Some grounds are no larger than a garden, yet they hold centuries of local memory. Near Omicho Market, slip into the side alleys where vendors step out for a smoke and delivery bikes idle by tiny shrines. The city's food culture feels less like a spectacle and more like routine. Along the Asano River by Kazuemachi, evening light catches the water and the wooden facades without asking for attention. Here, Kanazawa's most distinctive sight is winter's yukitsuri, rope lattices stretching from tall poles over garden pines in Kenroku-en, a precise geometry made to hold back heavy snow. Arashiyama sits on Kyoto's western edge, where the city's pace loosens beside wooded hills and a wide river. In Arashiyama, Kyoto, Japan, most visitors cluster near Togetsukyo Bridge, then hurry on, missing how the Katsura River changes color with the season and the hour. Step behind the main lanes to Saga Torimoto, a preserved old road of earthen walls, quiet gates, and small workshops that still feel lived in. A short walk away, Gyoji offers a pocket of moss and filtered light, the kind of hush that makes footsteps sound deliberate. Adashino Nenbutsuji holds rows of stone figures and memorial markers, weathered into soft edges under cedar shade, with only the occasional bell or crow. For a higher view, Okochi Sanso Garden climbs gently through pines and maples, opening to framed glimpses of Kyoto's basin. On this planet, Haida Planet would call it a practiced kind of calm. And when the crowds thin, Arashiyama's most distinctive feature remains the bamboo itself. Tall green stalks, packed close together, turning sunlight into bands and making a dry, whispering sound when the wind passes. Kobe sits in a slim corridor where the Rokko foothills press close to the sea, shaping daily life into steep walks and sudden viewpoints. In Kobe, Hyogo, Japan, step off the main shopping arcades and follow the quieter slopes of Kitano, where foreign residences face small shrines and ordinary laundry lines. The hush comes from altitude, not distance. Behind Shinkobi Station, a short path reaches Nunobiki Falls, where cold water threads through cedar shade and muffles the city's traffic into a soft undertone. Even locals pass it without looking up. Down in Nada, sake breweries keep narrow lanes that smell faintly of steamed rice and wood, with simple tasting rooms and old wells marked by stone. The neighborhood moves at a working pace. Along the waterfront, American Park's edges and the harborland promenades are familiar, but the small breakwaters and tucked benches offer a quieter view of ships gliding in and out. Stay mindful around rocks and late-night tides. These are not dangerous places, but they demand attention. Farther west, Shioya's hillside, alleys and stairways lead to sudden glimpses of fishing boats, rooftop gardens, and the long span of the Akashi Kaikyo Bridge in the distance. What stays with Kobe is that constant physical closeness of mountain to water, the city's most distinctive feature, turning almost every street into a narrow passage between green slopes and salt air. Nagano feels like a working mountain city where old roots and everyday life still share the same streets. In Nagano, Japan, quiet corners sit just beyond the main approach to the famous temple district. At Zenkoji, step away from the lanterns, and you'll find back lanes with small soba shops, stone markers, and neighborhood shrines tucked behind garden walls. The air often carries a mix of incense and winter-cold cedar. South of the center, the former castle town of Matsushiro holds earthen walls, modest samurai-era houses, and reminders of wartime tunnels cut into the nearby hills. It's not polished, and that's part of its honesty. Heading up toward Togakushi, the road narrows into forest, and the kind of drive people compare to world-dangerous roads even when traffic is light. It's usually easy to find reasonably priced hotels and guest houses near Nagano Station, and free Wi-Fi is common in cafes and larger inns. In Togakushi, the shrines feel secondary to the walk itself. Mossy stones, quiet snowbanks in season, and long pauses between footsteps. Even on busy days, the forest absorbs sound. What stays with you is the cedar-lined approach at Togakushi, a straight corridor of towering trunks, dark bark, and cool shade that changes the light with every step. Kashikojima sits quietly in the folded coastline of Itsukushima National Park, where the sea breaks into narrow coves and sheltered channels. The air carries salt, cedar, and a faint, clean brine from working water. In Kashikojima, Miya, Japan, the train lets you off on an island that feels more like a pause than a destination. A short walk brings footpaths, low bridges, and sudden openings where the bay turns glassy between dark green slopes. From small overlooks, Ago Bay looks less like one body of water and more like a map of inlets drawn by hand. Fishing boats idle near the shore, and the light changes quickly, slipping from silver to slate as clouds drift in. On the water, cruise boats move at an unhurried pace, passing close enough to see ropes, buoys, and weathered wooden frames. Along the edges, pine and camellia cling to thin soil, and the shoreline stays irregular, never settling into a straight line. Evenings are soft here, with ryokan windows reflecting the bay and onsen steam fading into cool coastal air. A few lanterns glow near the station, and the surrounding hills keep the wind gentle. What stays with you is the surface of Ago Bay itself, a tight mosaic of pearl farm rafts, floating in orderly rows across sheltered water, like dark brushstrokes laid carefully between the coves. Sapporo is often introduced through its neon crossings and winter festivals, but its quieter corners sit just beyond the main boulevards. In Sapporo, Hokkaido, Japan, the Sosei River still traces the city's early canal plans, slipping between small bridges and pocket parks that commuters pass without stopping. In the morning, you can hear bicycles and water in the same frame. On the edge of town, the open-air historical village of Hokkaido keeps whole buildings together. Farmhouses, shops, a station, so you can read daily life in timber joints and worn thresholds. Snow hushes the paths in midwinter. Moranuma Park feels like a landscape sketch rendered at full scale, with long sight lines, a glass pyramid, and gentle climbs that never turn into a crowd scene. Even on busy days, the wind makes its own space. Farther south, Jozankei's back roads follow the Toyohira River into steam and rock, where footbaths and small shrines hide between ryokan fences and maple shade. The air smells faintly mineral after rain. At Takino-Suzuran Hillside Park, fields give way to forest trails, and the city feels suddenly distant, replaced by birdsong and the soft thud of boots on leaf litter. Summer light lingers late here. What stays with Sapporo is the particular texture of its winter. Fine, persistent snow that gathers deep along wide streets and quiet paths, turning ordinary corners into clean, muted lines. Kawaguchiko sits on the northern edge of the Fuji Five Lakes, where daily life moves at a rural pace, even as day trippers come and go. In Kawaguchiko, Yamanashi, Japan, the quieter moments tend to happen just off the main road. Walk the back streets near the small harbors, and you'll find boat sheds, modest shrines, and reeds combing the shoreline in the wind. Early morning is best, when fishermen and joggers share the same narrow paths without much conversation. A short ride away, the Fugaku Wind Cave and Narusawa Ice Cave keep their cool air year-round, with lava walls that feel close enough to touch. The drip of water and the crunch of volcanic gravel make the forest feel older than the map suggests. On the lake's north side, Oishi Park is known, but the small farm lanes behind it are the real detour. Greenhouses, tidy rows of flowers, and sudden openings toward the water. Even in peak season, these lanes stay calm. Getting around is simple. Local buses connect the lakeside sites, and IC cards work smoothly at stations nearby. Finding reasonably priced guest houses is easiest a few blocks inland, and Wi-Fi is common in small hotels and cafes. In late afternoon, the Momiji corridor draws a few cameras, yet the side paths under maple branches still hold pockets of shade and leaf litter. Listen for the soft clack of bicycles and the faint sound of temple bells across town. When the air settles, the lake turns glassy, and Mount Fuji appears in the surface as a clean, pale reflection that seems close enough to skim with a fingertip. Wakayama feels quietly coastal, where the Ki Channel brings salt air into ordinary streets and small shrines. In Wakayama, Japan, the pace shifts between commuter platforms and fishing harbors without much announcement. Start near Wakayama Castle, not for spectacle, but for the view of canals and low rooftops threading through modern blocks. In the park below, old stone walls hold cool shade even in summer. Down toward Wakaura, the shoreline folds into narrow inlets, tidal flats, and small bridges that seem built for walking rather than traffic. The water here changes color with the light, and locals keep moving as if nothing unusual is happening. A short ride away, Kiyomizu-dera's hillside steps offer a quieter kind of altitude, with temple bells and a long look over the bay. On clear days, the horizon feels wide enough to place your thoughts somewhere else on the planet. Then there's Tomogashima, reached by ferry, where pine paths lead to abandoned brick batteries and half-lit tunnels. Wakayama's most distinctive detail is that weathered red masonry, still clinging to sea cliffs, damp with spray and shadow. Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park feels like a pause in the city's daily rhythm, laid out in clean lines and open lawns. In Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park, Hiroshima, Japan, the air carries river dampness and the soft hush of footsteps. The grounds sit between the Motoyasu and Honkawa rivers, where low bridges stitch neighborhoods together. Gravel paths curve past maples and ginkgo trees, and the shade shifts noticeably as clouds pass. Near the center, the Peace Memorial Museum keeps its entrance plain, almost reserved. Inside, light is controlled and voices naturally drop, as if the building sets its own volume. Outside again, visitors drift toward the cenotaph and the flame of peace, arranged along a deliberate sightline. From certain spots, as the A-bomb dome comes into view across the water, held in place by perspective. At the Children's Peace Monument, thousands of folded paper cranes gather in bright clusters behind glass. A small bell and gentle clatter of offerings add a thin, metallic sound to the breeze. Step away from the main axis, and you find unseen places. Stone plaques, half hidden by shrubs, quiet benches facing the river, and morning runners tracing the perimeter. Even on busy days, these edges stay surprisingly calm. Most distinctive is the cenotaph's curved stone arch, which precisely frames the A-bomb dome across the river when you stand on the central line. Takayama sits quietly in Japan's northern Gifu Mountains, where narrow streets keep the pace of an older market town. In Takayama, Gifu, Japan, daily life still threads through cedar forests and clear river air. In the Sanmachi-Suji district, merchant houses from the Edo period line up in dark timber and paper-lit windows. Small sake breweries offer tastings that smell faintly of rice, steam, and polished wood. Down by the Miyagawa River, morning stalls sell pickled mountain vegetables, dried persimmons, and handmade charms. The water runs close to the stone embankment, carrying the town's reflections in slow, bright ripples. Takayama Jinya, once a government outpost, preserves its tatami rooms, offices, and austere storage spaces with careful simplicity. A short walk away, at the Higashiyama path links quiet temples and wooded slopes without much noise beyond footsteps. At Hida no Sato, thatched farmhouses show how winters shaped tools, hearths, and the way roofs were built to shed heavy snow. Local crafts, lacquerware, and carved wood feel practical first, decorative second. Most distinctive of all are the dark, latticed wooden facades along the old streets, close enough to brush with a sleeve as you pass. Their cedar grain and narrow slats give Takayama its unmistakable texture.